It's Monday, August 5th, 2024. Is this our annual August market correction, or is this something worse? The UK might have just seen their version of January 6th, and it's been 3 weeks since the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. We're losing focus, and I'm losing sympathy. Next on the AM Update. Asia-Pacific markets continued the sell-off from last week while investors awaited key trade data from China and Taiwan this week. Japan's markets led losses in the region as the Nikkei 225 and Topix dropped as much as 7% overnight in volatile trading. Heavyweight trading houses such as Mitsubishi, Mitsui & Company, and Sumitomo all plunged around 10% at these levels, but the Nikkei and Topix are nearing bear market territory, having fallen almost 20% from their all-time highs on July 11th. It all started on Friday when American markets took a huge nosedive. Stocks tumbled on Friday on worries the U.S. economy could be cracking under the weight of high interest rates meant to whip inflation. The S&P 500 sank 1.8% for its first back-to-back losses of at least 1% since April. The Dow Jones dropped 610 points, or about 1.5%. The Nasdaq lost 2.4% as sell-off for stocks whipped all the way around the world back to Wall Street. A report showing hiring by U.S. employers slowed last month by much more than economists expected sent fears through the market, with both stocks and bond yields dropping sharply. It followed a batch of weaker-than-expected reports on the economy from a day earlier, including a worsening for U.S. manufacturing activity, which has been one of the areas most hurt by those high interest rates. Just to put this into perspective, Friday was the worst day for the stock market since March 16th of 2020, during that COVID panic. Is this the United Kingdom's version of January 6th? Rioters attacked a hotel used to house illegal aliens in the UK town of Rotherham on Sunday, as the country faces the worst social unrest it's seen in years. The violence was triggered by the stabbing of 3 young girls in Southport, northwest England, earlier in the week. The political right in Britain says that the attacker who stabbed those 3 young girls was not born in Britain. Police say the suspect was. In the latest violence, the Holiday Inn Express Hotel in Rotherham was targeted by protesters who stormed the building with reports of it being set on fire. Rioters threw objects and sprayed fire extinguishers at police officers during the clashes. Some of the rioters waved England flags as they chanted and faced off with officers. According to PA Media, at least one injured officer wearing riot gear was seen being carried from the scene. New radical left-wing British Prime Minister Keir Starmer had these words for the rioters.
Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests. Individuals will be held on remand. Charges will follow, and convictions will follow.
That sure sounds a lot like the UK's version of January 6th. Of course, nobody who's going to be accountable would not include the radical Islamist savages who have actually rampaged through Britain, but we won't talk about that right now. This was an example, in my estimation, again, looking from across the pond, of a lack of meekness, strength under control, just kind of raw rage. And yes, you should be filled with rage, righteous indignation, if you will, at any report of 3 innocent young girls being stabbed to death, especially if that stabber, that murderer, was not even in your country legally, which is what the right in England has claimed, or at least some on the right have claimed. But of course, the government is going to use this as an excuse, as an impetus to delegitimize concerns over immigration and delegitimize their political enemies. The U.S. will deploy additional warships and fighter jets to the Middle East to help defend Israel from possible attacks by Iran and its proxies. Tensions remain high in the region over the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran and a key commander of the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah. Missile defense forces were placed on a state of increased readiness to deploy, the Pentagon said, adding that its commitment to defend Israel was ironclad. Iran's leader Ayatollah Khamenei has vowed harsh punishment against Israel for the assassination of Haniyeh. The Hamas leader was killed, of course, in Tehran last Wednesday. Iran and its proxy in Gaza blamed the attack on Israel, who has not commented yet. I thought we would see more action over the weekend. Generally and pleasantly surprised we have not, but that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. Meanwhile, back home, Donald Trump rallied in Atlanta, and he wants you to know that he's a changed man after his attempted assassination. Not
Raffensperger and Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal. But these two are doing everything possible. Plus, your Attorney General would like to see him show up and do something. But, I mean, look at the love and adulation and applause. Your Governor, Kemp, and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. What are they doing? I don't know. They got something in mind, you know. They got a little something in mind. Kemp is very bad for the Republican Party. He wouldn't do anything, you know.
Well, actually, Governor Kemp won his election by a margin even greater than the last time you won Georgia. In fact, you didn't win Georgia last time around. Why are we talking about this? Why are we continuing to talk and lambast and lampoon Project 2025? Why did we spend the entire day on Friday lampooning Kyle Rittenhouse? Why are we talking about the sufficiency of Kamala Harris's blackness? You were nearly assassinated 3 weeks ago, and nothing has changed, obviously. More on that in Air Analysis. On the other hand, here's radical left-wing rabid communist Ayanna Pressley.
Well, it's deeply offensive, but predictable. It's a play from a tired handbook, but they're desperate. But, you know, look, Kamala Harris has been a woman of color her entire life. These trafficking and racist tropes and sexist tropes and misogynoir, that is no new experience for her. And so we're just going to keep doing what we need to do to build this broad and diverse coalition to ensure that we are successful in November. Donald Trump, you know, look, he just like Kamala's always been a woman of color. He's always been a bigot and a racist, discriminating against black tenants as a landlord, calling for the death penalty for the Central Park Five. And I could go on. He is an existential threat to every person that calls this country home.
No, he's not. He's telling you he's not. Basically, what she's telling you, though, is that the next Thomas Matthew Crooks better not miss. On the one hand, Donald Trump is so unfocused and so hardened in his ego that he can't even make one of the most sympathetic moments of his entire life. He can't even bring that to the forefront on a regular basis. Not in the messaging, at least at large. On the other hand, though, you've got a side who believes that Donald Trump is an existential threat to them and are acting like it and acting on it. That's like really unhealthy for a country, in case you didn't know. And now a little bit of a palate cleanser. J.D. Vance, vice presidential candidate, was on CNN. Well, he was interviewed by CNN at the border. And here's how you actually message effectively. Listen to this race-baiting reporter ask a question and how Vance handles it.
The former president's comments yesterday to the National Association of Black Journalists, where he said that Vice President Harris is, quote, all of a sudden black. As a father of 3 biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?
They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She goes to Georgia 2 days ago. She was raised in Canada. She puts on a fake Southern accent. She is everything to everybody, and she pretends to be somebody different depending on which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough-on-crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
That's how you handle things. That's actually polished. That's actually rehearsed. That's actually doing politics effectively. Not questioning her sufficiency of blackness. That's actually how you spin things your way. That's actually skilled rhetoric. Something that we're not used to these days. And now here's this. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Friday revoked the shocking plea deals that would have spared the death penalty for the accused mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks and his 2 alleged accomplices. In an official memo, Austin announced he had relieved the official responsible for signing off on the widely criticized plea agreements from authority and would instead assert his own authority in the matter. In the memo, Austin says, quote, I've determined that in light of the significance of the decision to enter into pretrial agreements with the accused in the above referenced case, responsibility for such a decision should rest with me as the superior convening authority under the Military Commissions Act of 2009. Effective immediately, I hereby withdraw your authority in the above referenced case to enter into a pretrial agreement and reserve such authority to myself. Boy, This must have been a ridiculous backlash, getting all the way to Austin within a period of about 48 hours for him to come in and say, hey, no, you're fired. You don't get to make this decision. We're still going to pursue the death penalty for those who are responsible for the planning of 9/11. A rare Lloyd Austin win there. That's good news. Former attorney and television personality Judge Joe Brown has some thoughts about Kamala.
But I gotta ask you about Kamala Harris. How you feel about her?
She's a piece of shit. I was in California. She lacked professional competence, and she worked on it by hiking up her hemline when she needed influence rather than researching. She's always tried to do the casting couch to get where she wants. Now, the problem is that'll get somebody to a certain level quickly. But you can't get past that level if you don't have competence and talent. So my thing about it is if I'm crude about it, in this city years ago, I used to represent a whole bunch of pimps and hoes, and I know a hoe when I see one. And I say this, I don't care, women, you do what you want to do if you want to have recreational sex, but when you do the casting couch or anything else for professional purposes to get paid or advance, you a hoe. And she's an old hoe. And the problem is what is she supposed to do? Somebody, one of her sycophant slaves comes up and unwraps her in a carpet naked at Putin's feet, and he says, oh yeah, I'm Julius Caesar. He said, no, ho, I got better stuff here already. Plus, I don't want you anyway, you old woman. Get on up, you know. Or Xi Jinping, is he supposed to be impressed? She's doing word salad. Well, we're here today because China and the U.S. are here today, and that's why we have to agree on what we're doing here today. Like, fool, what did you just say?
I think that speaks for itself. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I just want to reiterate something that I said earlier. We're 3 weeks removed from the most sympathetic moment Donald Trump has possibly ever been a party to in his entire life, certainly his entire political life. You had people all over the political spectrum who recognized that, whether that's Bill Maher, whether that's the Young Turks, whether that's fill-in-the-blank lefty I saw all over Twitter, all over media, for a few days, basically resigning themselves to the optics because of the optics of Trump raising his fist in the air with a flag over him, had resigned themselves to the fact he's going to win. He's going to win. Now we're 3 weeks later, and here's what we've been talking about in right-wing America for the last 3 weeks. We had Fat Elvis get up and give the nomination acceptance speech. That was not a president up there. That was Fat Elvis playing the greatest hits. We needed to see a changed Donald Trump, but no, it was just Fat Elvis. And then we started a debate, how black is Kamala actually? Is she actually sufficiently black? And then we had continued attacks on Project 2025, which is in existence to solve the main foible of the last Trump administration, actually hiring the best people. That's what its job was. That's what its mission was. And you successfully, with the help of the left-wing media, you successfully, seemingly, cowed them into silence. They're there to help you, and you hated them. And then we spent Friday bullying like a 20-year-old in Kyle Rittenhouse because he came to the conclusion that, you know what, Trump's not the best for the Second Amendment, so I'm going to write in Ron Paul. Okay, cool. But no, righty Twitter on the worst stock market day since 2020, March of 2020, instead spent the entire day bullying Kyle Rittenhouse. That was a sympathetic moment. Objectively so. That was not milked for nearly what it should have been. We should still be talking about that photo right now. Everyone should be. Everyone. Instead, we've talked about all the stuff that I just said. I'm still voting for Donald Trump. I was the most reluctant Donald Trump voter. Man, I've lost sympathy. I didn't really expect him to change that much. Hoping is different than expecting. I hoped he would change a little bit, coming within millimeters, centimeters of losing his life. I would hope even at his advanced age that would change a guy, but I knew deep down that probably wasn't going to happen. I at least desired to hold the sympathy that I had for him on July 13th that evening and July 14th. I hope to be able to ride that all the way to the ballot box, but that is close to disappearing. Oh, and I forgot one thing. We're going to attack one of the most, at least electorally successful Republican governors who doesn't hate our guts. Yeah, he went to the World Economic Forum, but Brian Kemp doesn't hate people like you and me. Yeah, we're going to go after him for insufficient loyalty. So, I cannot want to win more than the candidate wants to win. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.